good people of YouTube? Mountbatten here. And today, Wargaming hates Germany is something that you see pop up anytime any nerf or change is made to German ships or anything Soviet is released, either on a dev blog article or in a news article or in game. That's the common sentiment seen by many a player, or at least a very vocal group of players. Now what that means is that for some reason the devs at Wargaming, well, the Warships devs more specifically, who are Russian, for some reason hold a grudge against Germany for actions taken in the past, mainly of course the Second World War, and therefore make their nation in-game quite, well, subpar. At least from my understanding of the sentiment, and that seems to be what many a player will write about on Facebook, Reddit, any type of social media where anything Wood Warships is posted. Now today we're going to take a look at the German nation and take a look at many of the popular German ships right now and see how they stack up compared to their Soviet counterparts and how the German tech tree stacks up to the Soviet tech tree all in all, and of course compare them to other ships in game as well to see if this sentiment really holds true in game. So starting off with, well, let's take a look at the tech tree. If you would believe that Wargaming truly despises Germany, you might ask yourself, well, why does Germany currently, and with the next updates they will, have the biggest tech tree in-game? Yeah, that's right. They have the biggest one. They have a full line of cruisers. They have 2 full lines of battleships. They have a full line of destroyers, and they have a secondary destroyer branch, and they have a full line of aircraft carriers. They are quite literally the biggest tech tree nation in game. If you take a look at the Soviet Union, you have 1 full line of cruisers and a split from tier 8 and up. You have 1 full line of battleships, 1 full line of destroyers with a split from tier 8 and up, and 1 full line of aircraft carriers. Pretty close in size, but the full line of battleships and the fact that the German DD line split's a little bit lower than the Soviet DD line split makes up for that, and the Soviets have the biggest navy in game, even when compared to the US. Kind of weird, ain't it? So, yeah, that one's kind of dismissed right away. Of course, tech trees change, new ships are added all the time, and with the way that the devs are going, I'm sure we'll have a full split of like heavy and light cruisers for each nation, which is pretty cool. I think that, fleshes out the game more, and of course adds more free content for us players to grind through. But does it really matter if the stuff that they've released isn't any good? Well, let's take a look at that, shall we? Let's start from the right of the tech tree and work our way to the left, starting with the CVs. Right now, the Soviet CVs have been released in full, and the German CVs have been out for some time. I don't think it's much contest right now that the Soviet CVs are currently overperforming everybody right now in terms of CV damage. The Soviet CVs, at least for my taste, the mid-tier and even the tier 8 ones, they're pretty decent. The Pobeda could potentially be labeled as a bit overtuned, but do keep in mind these CVs have been out for less than 1 full patch. And if you look at the previous CVs upon their release, which would be the German CVs, ironically enough, they were quite busted upon their release too, if we remember. Now, the Tier 10, the Richthofen, and the, what is that? The Nakhimov. Jeez, how can I forget that thing? I just played it like 10 minutes ago. The Nakhimov, both are very powerful CVs. The Richthofen, without a shadow and a doubt of my mind, I'm sure many of you watching would say that the Richthofen was outright broken when it was initially released, like Omega broken. Like the Nakhimov, it's pretty stupid the amount of damage you can do in the Nakhimov, but that's all HE damage. The Richthofen could remove a quarter of your tier 10 battleship's health in 1 run, and it's AP Citadel damage, which means you ain't getting that back at all. So, yeah. And you could say, well, they nerfed the Richthofen to the ground. They did. Oh, yeah, they sure did when they changed the reticle. But a few patches ago, they buffed the Richthofen back to well, not back to its former glory, I would say. It's now a case of you will likely get a Citadel hit or two when you're making a run with the AP bombers, whereas post-nerf, good God, you were lucky if you got a hit on the target. But, and again, when it was released, it was like you're getting at least 2 Citadels on the target with the old reticle. So she's in a pretty decent place now in my mind. Nakhimov, again, if you're just going upon the current version that's in the game, I'd give it to the Nakhimov, saying that she's the better CV in terms of damage output. But you got to think too, the Richthofen can spot like traditional CVs can. The Nakhimov can't really do that because at that point, you know, you're throwing away your planes for your strike, which you can't really afford to do because of the one flight, one attack mechanic. The Richthofen too. I mean, if you want to talk about the CV itself, the Richthofen is better armored than the Nakhimov. If you get caught in the open in the Nakhimov, oh my God, you are getting citadeled by something, and it's going to hurt quite hard. But other than that, again, hands down, Nakhimov's better right now. But again, it just got released, and I don't think it's really fair to, you know, say it's better overall, and it will remain the better CV because there's a very high chance that it's going to get nerfed. I'd say at least by Christmas or New Year's. But again, if you just want to go with what's in the game right now, Nakhimov has the cake there. DDs. All right, DDs. This is where it gets interesting for me. I've said time and time again that the Khabarovsk is one of my favorite DDs in game, and it is. It's a very good DD, in my opinion. It is being replaced, unfortunately, by the Delany sometime in early 2022. Okay, that kind of sucks for, you know, some players, because now if you want the Khabarovsk, you have to go up and get it through coal, or you can grind it out right now until it does get removed from the game. But it's a good DD, and it's again one of my favorite ones in game. However, if you want to look at DDs as a generality, you want to look at what's used in competitive, because this is where DDs need to be at their peak performance at. I can tell you right now, there ain't a lot of Khabarovsk in competitive at all. It's a great random battles DD, running and gunning out in the open, melting targets down. It's fantastic for random battles, but in competitive, don't see many Khabarovsk. By many, I mean any at all. Normally, you might see one here and there, but you don't normally see it. Z52, on the other hand, you see a lot of Z52. It's a good cap controlling DD, although it is a bit older DD. There have been several DDs that have been released that have replaced it per se in terms of its cap contesting abilities. Ships like the Daring, even premium ships like the Smolensk, and shoot, even the Ragnar if you want to throw that ship in there too. But you will still see the Z52 around. The split Grozovoy, I haven't really played the Grozovoy. It's a pretty good DD from what I've seen. It was supposed to be the more AA-focused DD line on the Soviet DD line, but I don't think it's much contest between the Grozovoy and the Elbing. Elbing, if you remember, the Elbing line was, before it was even released, it was deemed to be a dead-on-arrival line, but then the Elbing line fully released, and oh my God, is Elbing just a destroyer of, well, anything that shows it they show the thing broadside. It was so chunky with its freaking AP if you're angled because of how good the Elbing AP is. The Elbing, if you don't know, the Elbing line is part of a designed line of basically very small light cruiser, very big DDs with light cruiser guns, if you will. They have very good AP, improved AP, pin angles, all that jazz. The dispersion on this DD line's guns, the maximum dispersion is literally 52 meters. So that basically means you point where you want the shells to go, and they go there. And the AP is so freaking good, you can Citadel just about any cruiser that shows your broadside. If you don't Citadel, then you're going to chunk them like crazy because of the nutty AP alpha damage on these DDs. I'm not sure if we'll get to it, but some of the background footage is me chewing through a Stalingrad, getting like 5 to 6 to 8K salvo hits on it using the Elbing's AP from like 13 kilometers away. It's pretty freaking nutty for a DD to do. So I would say the Elbing is just better overall because it's, well, the Elbing and the Destroyer of Worlds in terms of the split. Grozovoy is a good DD. I'm not saying it's not. But even if you look at like the average damage, the Grozovoy isn't up there too much in terms of average damage. Funny enough, Khabarovsk is ironically at the top, but Khabarovsk of old was quite the monster, but that changed with the BBAP pen mechanics, and then again with the commander mechanics, and they changed the AP pen mechanics yet again, and now it's better than it was after the nerfs they gave it. Then it's not as good as it used to be. It's been in the game a while. It's got a long history. All right, cruisers. Hindenburg versus Petropavlovsk. Boy, this is a tough one. Hindenburg is a very good cruiser. Made a video about it the other day. She is easily one of the best tier 10 cruisers. But so is Petropavlovsk. However, in terms of doing cruiser things, I'd say Hindenburg is better. Why? The guns are better. You might be thinking, huh? What do you mean the guns are better? It's the Petropavlovsk that's got those railguns. It sure does. And yeah, if you get within 12 kilometers of a Petropavlovsk, it will destroy you. A real simple solution, though, is to not get within 12 kilometers of a Petropavlovsk, because its guns really struggle to hit anything outside of 12-13 kilometers. Go play one. You'll see. Now, yes, if you do hit something, it's going to hurt with the AP, but again, you can do things like angle to avoid that, and you will have to make the Petropavlovsk delegate to HE spam, which, sure, it's okay at that, but it's not Hindenburg levels of HE spam. Hindenburg's a great HE spammer, and Hindenburg even has good AP as well on its guns, and it's got more guns too. Now, of course, against Soviet bias shells, so you got that going for you on the Petropavlovsk. And yes, again, if you hit something, it's going to hurt. But hitting something outside of 13 kilometers in the Petropavlovsk is not the easiest thing to do by cruiser standards. However, if you toss it up and say, well, I want a good tanking cruiser, Hindenburg is a good tanking cruiser, but it's no Petropavlovsk. Petropavlovsk has, of course, its armor scheme, and plus it's borderline a submarine with how low it sits in the borderline. So you would, be hard pressed to, and you guys know this, and many of us have shot at Petropavlovsk to no avail. It's so skinny and sits so low in the water that it's rough to hit. Even if you do hit it, its armor has it covered in terms of not absolutely eating dirt. So it's a close call here, but in terms of what you want out of a cruiser, Hindenburg's, the guns are better. It's better at running around and just burning targets down. AP is still very good on it too. If something shows your broadside, you can chew through them quite well. It's got 4 torp launchers per side with 4 torps per launcher. So you got the torpedoes in there. You got hydroacoustic search, and you've got great AA if you build into it there as well. At Petropavlovsk, it's got the survivability. Within 12 kilometers, it will tear your ship apart. Doesn't really matter what you're in. If you give it any sort of angle with its AP, it will chew you. No torpedoes, though, but it does have that 12-kilometer Soviet radar. It's got that going for it. And you can equip, I believe, Hydro or DFAA, depending upon what you want. But I would say the Hindenburg has better AA if you build into it there. So it's a close call, but I'd say it's almost tied here in terms of cruiser performance. Me personally, I prefer the Hindenburg. I just prefer that playstyle better than the Petropavlovsk. But for competitive, if you want something to hold a flank, Petro's great for that. You want something to be a good off-flank kiter that'll burn your enemies down, Hindenburg is good for that. I say they're about equally matched in what they're good at, and you can't really compare them, note for note, because they don't play the same. They're not the same type of cruiser. It'd be fair to compare the Hindenburg to the Nevsky, which they're both very good at what they do, but Nevsky, you have the radar, which does give the edge over the Hindenburg, but the Hindenburg's slightly better armored than the Nevsky. Yes, if you stay angled in a Nevsky, you because of the armor layout, you will, bounce a fair few shells, but if you call it broadside on Nevsky, you're going to pay very, 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 very dearly for your mistake. The Hindenburg, yeah, you're going to need a lot of damage there, but you're not going to get, 3/4 of your health removed like the Nevsky might have. So, yeah. In terms of what they do, I'd say the Nevsky's a little bit better in terms of competitive because of the radar, but the Hindenburg's a bit better for randoms because it's the Hindenburg, and you got that German HE going for you as well with the improved pins. So, yeah. It's hard to call there on the cruisers because Hindenburg, in my opinion, is just a very, very, very good cruiser. But Nevsky and the Petro are no lacking cruisers either there. So I'd say I'd give it to Hindenburg over the Nevsky. Petro and Hindi, I'd say you couldn't really compare them because, again, they're both good at what they're designed to do. Moving on to the battleships. Again, with the Germans, it's a bit of the reverse situation here because we only have one Tier 10 tech line Soviet battleship at the moment. That is, of course, the Kremlin. If you want to compare that to the GK, both ships are close-in ships, but they don't have much in common beyond that. Kremlin is a bow-in tanker. Hindenburg is a secondary brawler. GK is a secondary brawler. GK's got turtleback armor. It's got great secondaries. The secondaries right now with the Commander rework are absolutely amazing. 12.5 kilometer range, and once they get built up, they can really tear up their targets. But it does, of course, take that 40-ish seconds to build up to the improved accuracy. But again, if something stays within your secondary range for that long, it is going to get melted. Gets hydroacoustic search. It gets an absolutely massive hit pool in terms of points, which it was the king of until, well, the Kremlin came along. Then you got the Kremlin, which has, well, a great bow and armor scheme. You got the Soviet damage con, which cools down very quickly. Its armor on its bow and its deck is really freaking good. You got a deck armor that can pretty much show the middle finger to most HE that you're going to see at tier 10 and tier 9 and tier 8. So as you tier 10, you can see those tiers. Good AA when it's intact, but it's not going to stay intact because of the nerfs that happen to it. You got 9 457 millimeter 18-inch guns. That's kind of in the same boat as the Petropavlovsk. Within 13 kilometers, you'll have no problem hitting what you're aiming at. Outside of 13 kilometers, the Kremlin really struggles to hit much for a tier 10 battleship. Again, go play it yourself if you want to see how that works out for you. GK, not much better in terms of the accuracy on the guns, but it does have 12 either 406 millimeter guns or 420 millimeter guns. And of course, if you take the 406s, you have a better reload time. Take the 420s, you have better alpha. And again, it's kind of the same boat with the Kremlin. 13 kilometers in, GK has no problem hitting its targets. 13 kilometers out, it's going to be a bit rougher, but you do have 3 more shells to throw at the target thanks to the 4th turret. Now, the two ships don't really play the same. GK, it's much more of a, okay, when can I push? When can I take advantage of this opportunity? Or if you're defending a cap, you turn stern into the target, try to bait them to within your secondary range, you try to burn them down like that. It's a much more mobile ship than the Kremlin. Kremlin is much more of a, where's an island that I can hold on to? I'm going to point my bow toward the enemy team. I'm just going to tank an absolutely ridiculous amount of damage for my team and hope that my team pushes, or that whoever I'm facing against will push into within my effective main battery range, to where I can chunk the ever-living crap out of them with my Soviet 18-inch guns. So, in terms of which ship is better, I've played a lot more GK than Kremlin. I played a lot of Kremlin, though. Kremlin isn't great in this meta, nor is GK, because of the range issue, being that tier 10 matches are often, again, at much further distances than what they once were. Both ships really have to bide their time before they can really push into the action and see some action and be an effective ship. With GK, if anything gets within a secondary range, it's going to absolutely chew through it, no problem. Again, you got that German HE pins in those secondaries. Every single secondary gun on the GK can absolutely rip through whatever it's going to meet at tier 10. All of them pin 32 millimeters of armor, so you got that going for you. The Kremlin, if you get within 12-13 kilometers of the target, your guns are really freaking good for dealing with whatever it is you're facing, unless it's like a DD or something. The armor on the Kremlin isn't as good for close range brawling because its citadel is exposed, and once you get to the side of a Kremlin, if you got anything with big guns, it's pretty much dead, if you survived your brawl with it, of course. So, in terms of what's the better ship here, I mean, again, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a more mobile brawler, or do you want to be more of a stationary island holder? Both are good at what they do. They do it differently, just like the Hindenburg and the Petropavlovsk. But this time, they're much more closer because they're much more based around being close into the enemy team and finding them at close range. It's a difficult call for me because I do like the GK, but Kremlin's better in terms of tanking potential for sure because of the Soviet damage con and the bow and deck armor. And you do see Kremlin more competitive than you do GK by quite a long shot. But again, if you get a good captain and a GK and they can make it work, it's a lot better. But with Kremlin's just sheer tanking ability, it's hard to overcome that. So I'd say, at the moment at least, Kremlin's better than GK, depending upon what you want to do with it. But I'm not saying GK is a bad ship by a stretch of the imagination. Just that a lot more tanking that GK can do that Kremlin can do does push it over GK in terms of being a battleship. But then we got the Schlieffen, which I don't have because I didn't throw 38,000 doubloons at the auction. But Schlieffen and the German secondary battery, the secondary battleship line, battlecruiser line, I don't think anyone can say that these ships aren't absolutely awesome at what they do. They're coming out next patch in full. They're still in early access right now, and from what we've seen from, all of them, they're great brawlers. They're battle cruisers. They've got the fast cooldown damage con like the Soviets do. They got just absolutely bristling with secondaries, tons and tons of secondaries. They're fast, maneuverable, not the best well-armored ships because they are battle cruisers, but they're just a ton of fun to play, and I'm absolutely loving them right now. I managed to get up to the Ruprecht in the early access event. I can't wait for this Schlieffen to come out. In terms of tanking and being a battleship, yeah, Kremlin's better than the Schlieffen here, but I mean, these aren't battleships, these are battle cruisers, and they're really good at doing what they do, all up and down the line. Now, you might be thinking, well, why are you just comparing the tier 10s and not going up and down the line? Because that would take freaking 2 hours to do. And I think we can all admit every line has its up and downs in terms of how the ships perform. The lower tier German split DDs, they're not that great. They start to really get good at their Schultz. But the lower tier Soviet cruisers are all just absolute glass cannons with massive citadels that can get annihilated out of the water. The German battleships, they're really great and fun all the way up and down the line, except maybe with a little bit of a step down with the FDG. But even then, the FDG got buffed quite a few times in the past couple of years to where it's a pretty dang good ship now. The Soviet battleship line, they're really good. They're the tankiest ships up and down the line, all the way through the tech tree. So they're very good there too. So when you look at it like that, and I could go into much more closer detail with each ship and break down their stats and stuff, but that would be a video that'd be, again, like 3 hours long. All these ships have been treated fairly equally by the dev team. They've all received buffs and nerfs as they need it. I mean, Kremlin got the absolute crap nerfed out of it, like it very much deserved when it was released, and just blatantly overpowered. I still have a very strong feeling that a lot of the complaints about Kremlin being OP are from players that haven't played her or really paid attention to how the Kremlin performs since she got nerfed so hard. Yes, it took a while for them to do that. It takes a while for Wargaming to nerf any ship. I mean, we all saw how long it took them to nerf Richthofen that was blatantly broken, and how long it's taken them to nerf other ships too, like FDR, which, again, in my opinion, never should have got out in the state that it was. A Thunderer. Go on and on and on and on about the ships that have just been blatantly OP that it takes them months to nerf. So it's not really a case of Wargaming hating Germany. I mean, shoot, the German lineup right now is very strong all the way around, especially talking about the tier 10s, which I have the most experience playing. And the Soviet tier 10 lineup is really freaking strong too right now. Again, even sometimes a little bit too strong with the Petropavlovs, which has, if you haven't been paying attention, has been getting nerfs slowly over the past couple of patches. And yes, they're not massive nerfs by any stretch of the imagination, but if you take a look at it, Wargaming as a whole, for the Warships dev team at least, they've stopped doing massive sweeping nerfs in one go, and they now do teeny tiny nerfs over several patches, like we've seen with the FDR and buffs with the Zal, where the Zal's got basically 10% health buff, which is starting to become a significant buff to its health now over 2 patches. I'm sure they will buff it again. And if you even want to take a look at like the premium ships, the Slava, they nerfed the ever-living crap out of the Slava during its dev cycle. It can't tank. It's a tier 10 battleship with a 25mm massive nose. It can't be a battleship. Now, yes, the guns are absolutely great, but they're also 16-inch guns that you can just turn bow into and just bounce all day. The Siegfried, German tier 9 premium cruiser, a cruiser with 15-inch guns with cruiser dispersion on the guns. That's kind of nuts. Now, we are getting the Sevastopol, and we don't know exactly how that ship's going to play just yet, but I mean, still, the Siegfried guns are really good. They did rob her of her secondary build, which I am still salty about, but you can't deny that 15-inch guns with cruiser dispersion is quite good. Odin's a fantastic premium for the dockyard that it was released for. Many players say that she's trash. I still disagree with those players. She's still a really good ship. Scharnhorst is a good ship. Tirpitz is a good ship. Pommern is one of the funnest tier 9 premiums in the game right now. So, no, it's not really a case of Wargaming hating the Germans. They're just trying to keep the German tech line down because they still hold a grudge for past historical events like that. But, I mean, really, if you just take a step back and look at the ships, you can't really say that right now. And yeah, there was a point in time when a lot of these German ships were in very poor places, but they've been getting a fair treatment by Wargaming recently, at least. Again, you could looking at the premiums in the premium line right now. The Mine's one of the best tier 8 cruisers in the game at the moment. And yeah, the Soviet line's really strong too, but if you look at the other nations, there's the American premiums that are very, very freaking strong. Ohio, anybody? Massachusetts? Alaska? Or the British premiums? Thunderer? Yeah, the Thunderer's pretty freaking nutty. Still is, even though it just got a range nerf, but it's in a lot better position now than it was originally. So forth and so on. So I just want to give you guys my 2 cents about that. I mean, I love German battleships. They're fantastic ships. They're fun to play, but I don't think there's any bias against them from Wargaming, at least recently. So let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments down below. I'm sure this will be a fun comment section, to say the least. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Tuesday. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. On our way to 35,000 subs, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you're all having a wonderful Tuesday and a wonderful week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.